All right, welcome everyone. My name is Graham Calder, founder of P3 Permaculture, and today we're going to get started in looking at some of the basics of permaculture design. I'd first like to talk a little bit about P3 Permaculture because for me this project came about as a need was really expressing itself in my life and in the community that was surrounding me when I was graduating at Concordia University. In my final months of graduation of my Bachelor of Geography, specialized in human environment with a minor in ecology, I had an ex-girlfriend of mine was asking me to help her planning this date palm plantation that her parents wanted to invest in. And I immediately, flags went up and decided that I would try and steer her away from any kind of monoculture plantation at that time, because as we know, monocultures are having a lot of trouble. And date palm, if you're going to start one now, in 5-10 years when the dates start producing, we're going to have a lot more problems with climate change, drought, and so on. So immediately she poised me with the idea of searching for more sustainable agricultural techniques in Jordan, which is when I went online and found a video from Jeff Lawton called Greening the Desert. And in this short video, they talk about how 10 acres of desert salted flat in the Jordan Dead Sea Valley could be transformed into or back into its natural state of a tropical Mediterranean abundant multi-species forest. So this video really transformed me because in studying biology and studying environment, studying climate, studying soil, there's so many different problems that we faced in university. Often I say that we got a complementary degree in depression, unfortunately. And the reality was that in university, we were not prepared with solutions for these problems that we were taught about. And this became a real big issue because we were very, very much taught it's time to go out there and discover these solutions and find solutions for the problems that we face today. In this 5-minute video on YouTube, however, I realized that some of the solutions were fundamentally rooted in observation of nature and incredibly accessible and affordable and applicable at a scale that is incomparable to any other strategy. So with these 5 minutes discovering how a massively desertified, oversalted soil can be transformed and reborn, it brought me into this real moment of hope and inspiration for what we can achieve as humans on Earth today. It's really important for me to focus on that as a starting point because I know many of you come from a background wherever you're coming from. There's always a bit of anxiety and stress and uncertainty about where we're going and how we're getting there with regards to climate change, the earth, the water, food security, social health, mental health of our peoples, community health, all of these different elements. And so when really looking at permaculture as a design science, as a way of designing solutions to our problems based in what nature has been doing and evolution has been doing for thousands of years, we really see that there's a massive skill set here that's applicable in many different ways. So what I ended up doing was I ended up writing a 4-page, very passionate email to Jeff Lawton, begging him to let me come and study with him in Australia, apprentice or intern in any way possible. I didn't have the funds available to be able to work or to be able to work out a training with him that was fairly expensive, as well as the flight to Australia. So I convinced him to let me come over and do a apprenticeship for 3 months working with them in exchange for the work that we did. It was basically using a woofing model for the actual exchange. So we did that only after the fact, but that Jeff actually slowed me down. He said, hold on, before you fly all the way to Australia, how about you go see one of my students, Jesse Lemieux, in British Columbia, and get the basics of permaculture there. And if you really still like it, if you really still want to get into it, then come to Australia. So I did just that. I talked to Jesse Lemieux. I managed to work out a work trade with him so that I could do an exchange for hours against the tuition of the PDC, which is really the only way that I was able to afford the course. And I went and took my PDC in Denman Island with Pacific Permaculture. So after the PDC, I was incredibly passionate. I started the P3 Permaculture as a company and began, working with the business and starting to get little garden consultations and little workshops on introduction to permaculture or composting or making seed bombs or making your own self-watering garden and garden planters and things like that. But really, it was after I did these three months immersive apprenticeship in Australia that I really started to pick up what we offered and what we did with P3 Permaculture. So we went and and studied in Australia, and I worked on various different projects. Namely, the one that really I remember very distinctly was how it all began. We were all sitting at breakfast and eating different fruits and whatever else, and I had just finished mango. This was like my second or third day. It was very early on. Jeff was there eating breakfast with us, and I finished the mango, and I asked Jeff, "Where do you want to plant your mango seeds?" So after breakfast, he said, "Oh, I'll show you after breakfast." So after we finished, he kind of said, "Okay, come with me." And we walked down to the nursery area, or the outdoor area where he grows trees. And at that moment, the person who was managing that section of Zaytuna Farm was no longer there, and there was kind of in limbo from when that person left and waiting for someone else to take over. And so Jeff walks me over and he says, "Here's the soil pile. This is your pots here. This is your irrigation manifold. From here, you can connect all the different irrigation systems and have access to different sections. Basically, we want as many mangoes as you can plant. We want as many cuttings of bamboo as you can make. We want lychees. We want papayas. Any of the fruit seeds that come through the kitchen, we'll put them out to you, and you can get them planted as soon as possible. Any questions? No? Okay, great. Get started." So he kind of pushed me into managing the nursery area of Zaytuna Farm for a large portion of the 2.5 to 3 months that I was actually there. Some of the other projects that we worked on were natural building as well as steel construction, swale building, and then I specifically took 2 1-week trainings with him. One was the teacher training course, and the other one was the Earthworks certification course, where we together with their team watched them and learned how to build a 8 million liter pond. That was a water retention structure that then fed into a 3-kilometer swale system for flood and drought management. So after returning from Australia, I was working on a few different gardens and giving little workshops here and there about lasagna gardening and introductions to permaculture. But people were really starting to want to have the permaculture design certificate offered to them in Montreal. There was one other teacher at the time, and he's still teaching now, more human-centered permaculture. But Bernard Alonso was definitely teaching and has been teaching for quite some time in the Quebec area. But people were looking for an Anglophone teacher, as well as someone who's got more of a design focus. And so we started questioning, are we going to start teaching the permaculture design certificate course? Is this something I'm able to do? I'm skilled enough to do? And having been brought up on a 72-acre subsistence homestead farm in Nova Scotia, I had a lot of the basic skills, a lot of the understanding. Having taken geography courses in human environment, we had to take all of our climate courses, soil courses, geology courses, and all of these, even the atmosphere courses, which all really fit in well to the different chapters of a permaculture design certificate that we teach. And so I didn't have enough experience in aquaculture and in drylands and in some of the other things. I had a fair bit in tropics from having been in Australia. I had a lot in temperate climate from being raised here in Canada, but I still didn't have the full palette of what it was to teach. And so I contacted Jeff and I said, listen, hey, people want me to teach here. I feel like it's a bit early on. I don't necessarily have all the skills and experience firsthand. And he said, that's fine. If people are asking you to teach, it's because you're ready to teach. If people are asking you to share that knowledge, then it's time to start sharing it. And he said, but be humble. Don't pretend that you have experience in all these different climates that you don't. When you're using stories that are stories from your teacher or from me, make sure you quote them and make sure you source them. And so that was really great for me because it kind of opened the door. I felt less afraid of starting to teach. And we offered our courses very early on at an incredibly affordable price because we specifically advertised that this is our first time teaching. We are, not fully experienced in all the different domains of permaculture. These are the experiences that we have, and so on and so forth. But people loved it. We did weekend workshops. We did evening workshops and trainings to get the full permaculture design certificate. But it really took off and started pushing me down this direction of teaching and also learning the areas of the permaculture design certificate that I was not fully versed in. So that is what took us to where we are today, where now we have taught more than 350 students in over 10 different countries in 3 different languages, and we're really starting to get an expression of permaculture that is much more than just the theoretical approach. And in fact, that's one of the beauties of what we're doing now with these online courses, is that the preparation to the course gets out of the way a lot of the theory that is required to fully understand the functioning of a soil ecosystem or a forest ecosystem or an aquatic ecosystem, so that when you arrive at the farm, you have the ability to jump right in, get your hands dirty, get in the pond, start understanding and observing and working with the actual systems that we have taught about. And so there's a beauty in this dichotomy between the online and hands-on course, where now we get to prepare you all for what you will be working with on site. So this is why we've focused on this set of preparatory online courses to really get you engaged in the content early on, get your brain thinking, get those questions rolling, so that you can be ready for when you land on the site, when you land on the farm, to really dig in and get the most out of this experience that is being immersed in a functioning permaculture farm.